The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the hosts and guests may or may not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Miami University.
I am going into my last semester of chemical engineering.
I'm a senior journalism major.
And I'm minoring in supply chain and operations management.
I'm a biochemistry major. Classes are going great. Extracurriculars are going great.
I'm an RA on campus.
I'm thriving.
Hi, I'm Jason Megacy, and this is Major Insight. This is the podcast where we talk college life with amazing students about how to find your place and purpose on campus. Kristina Miljkovic has been interested in psychology from an early age. Ever since she saw how the pressures of ballet dancing affected the mental health of many of her close friends. At college, psychology has continued to influence her work in the research on eating disorders and suicidality lab here on campus. She also conducts research on drunkorexia, and today, Kristina has added public health into her program to help even more people live happier, healthier lives. We'll also talk about overcoming some common college challenges, like avoiding the trap of comparing yourself to others and the importance of taking things one day at a time. Today, we have a person on the podcast who is doing lots of important work in the field of psychology. So I guess just to kick things off, who are you?
Hi, my name is Kristina Miljkovic, and I'm a senior here at Miami. I'm actually in the combined program, so my undergraduate major is psychology with a dance minor, and I'm also in the master's program in the kinesiology, health, and education department, which is in public health education and promotion.
Lots going on there. All right, so let's back it all the way up before you even got into college. Where are you from originally? I know that might be a hard question because before we were talking, but if you could sum it up in the best way.
Yeah, it's a little complicated. But I actually moved to Oxford, Ohio in the middle of high school from Fargo, North Dakota. But my mom works at Miami, so that's what brought us to Oxford.
So I know you told me that both of your parents are not originally from the U.S., is that correct?
Yes.
So how did them being not from the States impact you growing up?
So both of my parents are from former Yugoslavia in Europe. And so they actually came over like 30 years ago to continue their education to get PhDs, and my mother her master's. But overall, I think I was brought up in a very ethnic household. I spoke a different language at home. And so it kind of changed my perspective in a lot of things, and I feel like opened my eyes. I do like to travel a lot, and I've gotten the opportunity to travel because I have most of my family is in Europe, not in the U.S. And so that has really kind of shaped my upbringing and who I am as a person, I would say. Yeah,
and then you also mentioned, obviously dance is your minor. So when did that start to become part of your life?
Yeah, so I started dancing when I was 4 years old. I remember the day before my first ballet class, I was so nervous because I didn't know if this was what I wanted to do. But I danced from the ages of 4 up until my senior year of high school. And I did want to go pre-professionally once I moved to Ohio. I was in the pre-professional program in the academy, and that was kind of my main life goal. And then unfortunately, my knee got a really bad injury, my left knee. And so I kind of had to pull back on that. And I found a way to incorporate dance in college by having the dance minor here at Miami.
Yeah. Now I'll be interested to hear how that all, comes together. But more professionally, when did psychology start to, come onto your radar as something that you could do for a career?
It was actually while I was dancing, because so many of my close friends and peers had eating disorders or had severe anxiety or were kind of just going through their own mental health problems. And, it was high school, so everyone's kind of going through it in their own way. And I started to become really passionate about it because a lot of my close friends were dealing with it. So that I realized that was something that I wanted to study and learn more about.
Do you think that's a problem across dance, or is it mostly just growing up, you have problems, things of that nature?
I definitely think it's a problem in the industry. So I think all things that are kind of in the art industry where it's the perception of someone's body, obviously, is going to have an impact on those types of things.
Yeah. So, I know you said it influenced you into wanting to pursue psychology, but how did it just impact you mentally to see your friends and people around you that are so close to you, struggling with things like this?
It was very difficult because you always want to help, but sometimes you don't know how. And obviously every person is a little bit different. And in that age, once again, like, you don't really know how to approach the situation. You don't know if it's how serious someone is being about it. And so I think that's where, once again, like, I just wanted to learn, like, why do these things happen, or how do they develop, and how are you actually supposed to treat them or help someone that's going through it?
Yeah. And so kind of talk to me about your college search process. Was ballet like a thing that you were pursuing in your college search process, or was that kind of more on the back burner at that point?
At that point, it was kind of on the back burner because I was told by multiple like professionals in terms of my physical health that I would not be able to pursue a ballet career. I was told multiple times if I were to continue dancing at the rate that I would need to get knee replacement by the time I was like 25. So that was not an option anymore. But in terms of the college search, I kind of knew I was going to come to Miami because, like I said, I have a parent that works here. So that was kind of the best option for me. I was really interested in going to the East Coast, like New York, which actually my freshman year I did try to transfer. And I got accepted, but then I decided to stay here. And I'm really happy with my decision because COVID happened, and so that wouldn't have been good. But also I had a lot of great opportunities here that made up for everything. So
Yeah. And that leads perfectly into my next question. Obviously, freshman year, no matter if you're 20 minutes away or 20 hours away, you know, like it's just a change of scenery. You know, you stayed on campus freshman year, is that right?
Yeah, I was in the dorms.
Yeah. So that's just a completely different lifestyle in and of itself. You're living with somebody that you may not have known before, right? And so just kind of talk to me about what the biggest challenges were for you and what prompted you to want to transfer and then ultimately stay.
So for me, I think the biggest thing was that I did live in Oxford for 2.5, 3 years before, and so I really wanted a change of scenery. I kind of like a faster pace, and I wanted to always live in a big city. And at the time, like in the beginning of my freshman year, I didn't feel like I was getting as many opportunities as I wanted to or possibly could have. But then I realized that I just wasn't seeking opportunities in the right places, I guess. And so that's really why I wanted to transfer. I really just wanted to live in a big city.
Yeah.
And
is that still something that you're interested in doing?
yes, it really is.
What specific places you got in mind?
Chicago or New York.
Got you. I'm interested to see you like tease that out a little bit. Like what do you mean by you weren't looking for opportunities in the right spot?
I kind of thought that maybe, I don't really know exactly what I thought, but I thought it'd be easier that, you know, maybe like people would reach out to you or like the department, like the psychology department would present you with opportunities, which they do in their like weekly newsletters and stuff. But you get more out of it if you go to faculty and reach out and say, this is what I'm interested in. How can you help me?
Yeah.
Or, you know, what can I do moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big thing. A lot of people get confused because even I was there when I was a freshman. There's so much tailored to you when you're coming in, right? They're sending you all these letters, this and this. But when you actually get here, it's like, all right, you got to make the most of what you're doing. So when did you start to kind of get involved with things, and what kind of things were you getting involved with when you started to connect the dots and say, okay, well, if I'm going to be here, then I got to go get it myself?
So my freshman year, I kind of made a bold move. I printed my resume and knocked on a professor's door in the psychology department, who at the time was Dr. April Smith, who no longer works here. But she was the director of their research on eating disorders and suicidality lab, so the REDS lab. And I was just like, hi, I'm a freshman. Here's my resume, my GPA, my past work experience. I'm super interested in your work and research, and I would love to have a position in your lab. And pretty much immediately, she was kind of surprised because normally people don't knock on her door and like hand her resume, especially as a freshman. And so I got an interview, and the next semester in the spring, I started working in her research lab.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's definitely going and getting it type of thing. But I mean, before we dig more into like what you're doing with psychology, if you're looking at it big picture, a lot of people are like, oh, psychology, what are you going to do with that? Like, do you ever get those kind of questions, and like, how do you combat them when they do come your way?
Oh, I get a lot of questions like that, especially like, how do you think you're going to be able to do that for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Like, isn't this something that's going to burn you out, like listening to people's problems all the time? But I think it's important to be really passionate about it and to kind of have a deeper connection or reason why you even chose the field in the first place, because everyone wants to help people, everyone wants to be a good person, but it's kind of like the energy and effort that you're willing to put into it is what will lead you to be successful, I think.
Got you. So, like we've been saying this whole time, a lot of your work is centered around eating disorders and suicide. That's heavy stuff, So just talk to me about, what kind of work you have been doing over these last 4 years and, how that's impacted your whole college experience.
So in the beginning, my freshman year when I first started in the REDS lab, I started doing projects that were related to body dysmorphia. And then my sophomore year, that's when I started doing more like suicide risk assessments for the graduate student that I was working for. And then I kind of went back into eating disorders my junior year. So that's when I realized I'm still really passionate about this research, and I sought out to join the master's program, which is where now I continue to do kind of eating disorder-related research with my new advisor.
And I know that you had mentioned before we started recording this thing called drunkorexia. Is that a thing?
Yes, drunkorexia.
So, can you just explain that for people that might not understand?
Yeah, so drunkorexia is compensatory eating disorder behaviors occurring at the same time at like an alcohol consumption event. So it's basically like when you decide to skip dinner before a night of drinking because you want to get drunk faster, or you choose to drink alcohol that has the least amount of calories. There's a ton of different behaviors that occur with it, but it's basically a mixture of disordered eating behaviors and alcohol.
Just from your perspective, obviously you have done all this research. How do you see that when you see people acting in that way? What goes off in your mind?
What goes off in my mind is that I think a lot of people I don't want to say don't have their priorities straight, but a lot of people kind of want either to fit in with their friend group or whoever they're around, or maybe are going through something else. Drunkorexia is really commonly seen with alcohol disorders, like alcohol use disorders, or eating disorders in general. So it could also be a sign of like an underlying problem that someone does really have an eating disorder or, is becoming an alcoholic.
Yeah. So now tell me more about how, obviously, dance is still a part of your life. How is that supplemented into your education and your overall experience?
So I am in the dance minor. I completed the dance minor in my first 2 years of my degree, but
that was probably light work. That was probably easy.
It's like an 18-credit program, so it was pretty good. It was a nice compliment since I did have to take functional anatomy,
For the dance minor?
Yeah, for the dance minor, I did have to take that. It was actually a very difficult class. I will put that out there. But it's good. It's good for you to know those things, I guess, especially because it kind of connects back to psychology and the body and whatnot.
And do you have any plans to, continue having dance a part of your life after you're done here, or how does that fit into the bigger picture?
Well, my dream job is to be a clinical psychologist for a major ballet company. It's like the New York City Ballet or Ballet West, San Francisco Ballet, something like that. That would be like my absolute dream, because then, I would be going back to my high school self working with ballet dancers who are going through it. So.
Yeah. And I think that's real noble too, because you've seen it when you were young. Now you've gotten all this training and being able to go back and apply what you've learned, and not just in the classroom, but also on a personal level. I think that could be, very useful. And I'm sure, you've already thought about all the different ways you can make an impact. So immediately after, what does life look like for you?
So I am currently applying for jobs to work as a research assistant or a research fellow at a university, kind of get more research experience under my belt, or also jobs in the clinical field, so work for a hospital, which would still fall under like a mental health service kind of. But the main end goal is to get into graduate school for clinical psychology. PhD program is the goal. But the pipeline right now is that you don't get into it right out of undergrad. You need to get some more years in between and then apply.
Gotcha. In what ways do you think you've grown through these 4 years? Like where you started to where you're finishing now?
I feel like I have grown, honestly, more than I ever thought I would. Because here, graduation is a few weeks away, and I didn't think that I would be achieving what I have. I didn't even think I would have the opportunity to get my master's and bachelor's in 4 years. I didn't think I would be able to complete it. And so I am really proud of myself. Yeah. And I think it will be really rewarding. It feels rewarding. The process has been honestly pretty difficult, but I love to think of like growth through adversity. Like I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't get to go through that and experience, the hardships of literally working academically so hard. Yeah. So I feel like I've grown more than I could have ever imagined, honestly.
Yeah. And how does the public health aspect tie into everything?
So I am taking like the public health classes, but technically my advisor, she does health psychology. So it is a branch of psychology, and that's what like my research kind of fits into. But public health is really important because psychology is on an individual level, while public health is looking at a larger group of people. So it is beneficial to be able to recognize and work with both. Like in psychology, you would be helping a person who has depression on an individual level, but at a public health level, you're addressing how depression may affect like the community or a school or a specific kind of larger group of people.
Got you. Now back to the personal reflection stuff. How has your image of college changed over these 4 years?
I think it hasn't changed too much. I think what has changed is, like I said before, is the amount of opportunities. Honestly, once you start looking for the opportunities, it feels like they just keep coming to an extent. There are times when my calendar schedule is like, oh, well, we're just going to keep going because we are doing all these things, which is great. I would never honestly take any of it back, but it's exactly kind of what I thought it was going to be, plus a lot more.
Yeah, that's dope. And obviously you don't just do school.
Yeah, no,
right?
No.
So what other stuff do you do besides studying?
I am involved with a few clubs on campus. So I am really passionate actually about like fashion, modeling, and such. So since I've been on campus, I've been a part of Up magazine. My sophomore year, I was actually the cover of the fall issue, which was really fun. And I'm also in my university fashion and design, and I've been in their fashion show since freshman year. I also have a job. So I work, but it is related to psychology, so I'm not sure if that's like a break from school, but I'm really passionate about it. So
Now, talk to me about your favorite classes and shout out any other teachers that you didn't already do.
Well, I have to shout out Dr. Peter Simpson, the psychology department, because that guy is so funny, and he genuinely is one of those professors that if you're willing to put in the work and come to class, you will succeed. And so one of my favorite classes was his class in psychopharmacology. One of the first things we learned is that alcohol doesn't actually kill brain cells. So he likes to put a little like twist on the class by trying to make jokes about things that he thinks are prevalent in college life.
And then the last question that I have, I want to kind of change it up because I liked how you packaged it when we were talking before. So what I usually ask people is if you could go back and give your freshman year self advice, what would you say? And you said, it's not that deep, you'll be fine. So I just want you to explain exactly what you meant by that, because I think that's the perfect way that's exactly what I would say to myself if I could go back.
Yeah, it's really not that deep. And I have that problem with a lot of things is that it's all or nothing. Like, oh, if I don't do this, like, I'm going to be so upset or I won't have this opportunity. But it's seriously not that deep. Just take one day at a time. There are so many opportunities, and it's okay to say no to one because that doesn't mean that you'll never have another one again. Yeah. And things just find a way to kind of work themselves out.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm definitely under the belief that, you end up where you need to be, right? If you're doing all the things that you think you should be doing, then you'll end up where you need to be. And then if this isn't where you want to be, you just pivot. You know what I'm saying?
No, I completely agree. I would say one of the biggest learning experiences I actually had was trying to transfer because I use that as like a huge, everything happens for a reason type of thing, because I think if I would have transferred my freshman year, I would have been going to a school that was $70,000 plus a year when COVID happened. Yeah. So I would be sitting in Oxford at home anyways. Yeah. So to me, that is like thank God I didn't go.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment where because I feel like every college student goes through the time where they see other people doing things and that kind of is like, oh, am I not doing the right thing. Did that ever happen for you?
Oh, yes. I would say this semester, actually.
Yeah.
Because I feel like everyone's getting jobs. They knows what they want to do. And I do know what I want to do, but it's kind of hard to come to terms with the field because the psychology field is not as easy to get a job in post-grad because you do need to continue your education.
Yeah.
And that's just how like the pipeline works for psychology. So, and I think it needs to be talked about a little bit more so that students are aware instead of, becoming psych majors and then expecting like, oh, I can work in a hospital after I graduate. Well, you can't.
Yeah. I think the most important thing for people to understand is that somebody told me this the other day. It's like people might be passing you, but it's in their lane, so you can't be in their lane. You're in yours. So you just have to kind of roll with what's going on with you and, take everything in stride that way. You can't keep looking over in somebody else's lane because then you're just going to crash in your own, right?
Yeah, that's what we talk about in psychology all the time. Everyone's on their own path. And you can be on the same tree branch. Like that's how we've learned about in class. Like you can be on the same tree branch, but the branch can always branch into smaller little branches.
Yeah.
So
that's a very psychology type of thing. Yeah, I feel that. Well, I appreciate you for coming on. The work you're doing is very, very important, and I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today.
Kristina Miljkovic is studying psychology and public health at Miami University with a minor in dance. After graduation, she plans to continue her work as a research assistant before taking the leap into grad school. And thank you for listening to Major Insight. If you enjoyed this podcast, share with your friends or anyone interested in navigating college life. Many more episodes are now available wherever you get your podcasts.